So we made it. We're officially an official big time pod because this is our very first sponsored pod. And this podcast is brought to you by the good folks over at Dr. Squatch. Don't let's break the stigma here, fellas. Let's not smell like a wrestling fan. They're a stereotypical wrestling fan. As some say, to be the man, you have to beat the man. But in order to beat the man, you can't smell like you just wrestled an Iron Man match. Wearing this makes you smell, and feel like a champion. And if you click the link down in the description, you can get the Maverick Musk bar soap completely free. Just by clicking that referral link down below. And also while you're there, you can do the build your own box. So you can put any type of scented bar soap in there, cologne, deodorant. They have shampoo and conditioner. They have razors, lotions, face wash, anything you need. To start smelling good. So use our referral link down in the description. Head over to drswatch.com and check that out. But today, we have a very special podcast because this is something that Logan has been trying to get me to record for about a month now. And for some reason or another, it's just been put on the back burner, whether we have a more timely podcast we got to do or an interview or I fall asleep on my bed. A lot of things just get in the way. But we are finally here. This is a podcast that Logan's been dying to do. We're talking Sherri Martel and Luna Vachon.
Yes. So a few months back, we of course did the Miss Elizabeth and Woman podcast slash video where we discussed two of the more polarizing, two of the more popular valets in professional wrestling history. And, their lives kind of intersected. So we've got two more here. This is going to be part two of a three-part pod. At the end of this, I will explain which diva gets to have a whole pod dedicated to her. But for this installment, as he said, we are talking about Sherri Martel and Luna Vachon. Two people that I think go hand in hand with women's wrestling, especially at the beginning when it was trying to take off. And both of these ladies, of course, their careers intersect as well. And Anthony, if you would like to kick us off with the beginning of Sherri Martel.
Yeah, Sherri Martel, better known as Sensational Sherri. She was born all the way back in 1958, if you can believe that. She is a baby boomer, right? I think that's the baby boomer generation.
Yes.
Okay, boomer. In Birmingham, Alabama. She grew up playing basketball and track and field. A natural born athlete, if I do say so myself. But her early professional wrestling career, she was first introduced to professional wrestling as a young lad. Her mother would take them to shows down in Mississippi, of all places. Real hotbed down there in the 80s. Mississippi was. Their mother would ask them like, "Hey, do you want to go to this wrestling show, or do you want to go do that dumb ice skating shit down the road?" And Sister Sherri's like, Mom, let me get my hands on that pro wrestling. So they did.
Yeah.
And they went to the wrestling shows.
I would like to point out too, before people try and jump on Anthony and say, you said her siblings. Why aren't you bringing up Rick Martel? Although they shared the same wrestling last name, Rick the model was actually not Sherri Martel's brother, as much as your grandfather's fathers and uncles would like you to believe.
We'll say Sherri's her actual birth name is Sherri Lynn Russell. So we'll throw that out there. Not to break kayfabe here. Sherri Martel. All right, listen. But in the early 70s, Martel approached somebody by the name of Grizzly Smith, an American professional wrestler. He was the father of Jake the Snake Roberts, if you believe that.
Yes, yeah, a bad man. It's probably good that he did not help her.
Sometimes you need some tough love. That's what I say. She asked him. She asked for becoming a wrestler, but he questioned her conviction and told her to come back to him in the year 1980. That's when he would have some more free time, and when she was an adult. She eventually
A
married
little
her.
ironic, don't you think?
I guess. Uh, she she eventually married her second husband and gave birth to her only son. His name was Jared, but they got divorced. She became interested in becoming a professional wrestler and sought training from Mr. Personality Butch Moore in Memphis, Tennessee, the real hotbed of wrestling in Memphis, Tennessee. Oh, you just Logan especially saying that Grizzly Smith touched young girls. Whoops. Yeah, good thing. Good thing she did come back to him as an adult, or maybe not. She didn't go back to him. Uh, so she started wrestling in Memphis, Tennessee, under the name of Sherri Martin. I don't know. But she needed some more training. She was green. She was green as hell. She kind of looked like Joe Hendry out there. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm joking. I'm joking. Uh, she trained. Actually, she started training at the Fabulous Moolah School. If you believe it or not, Moolah would end up
Which
would be the one changing her name to Sherri Martel that we would know today.
yeah, it's probably not much better going from Grizzly Smith to Fabulous Moolah if all the rumors and innuendo are to be true, but you had to
Accusations.
break in somehow.
Accused. All right. They're just accusations.
Yeah.
She would
Yeah.
go and wrestle in Japan in 1981. Uh, Now, Moolah claims that Martel liked to go to the nightclubs and like to party, which what wrestler didn't do that in the 80s? Um,
Especially a young wrestler too. I mean, you're getting to travel, you're getting the spotlight, you're getting paid. I mean, not a lot, but enough to, hit the club up.
yeah, yeah. I think that was a little bit hypocritical. You tell me Moolah didn't go to any fucking nightclubs or parties in her youngin days. But she would get kicked out of Moolah school. And she would go all the way back to the great state of Tennessee and Memphis, where she hooked up with Jim Cornette, another.
She was managed by,
That's what I said. I was just
not
saying
hook
that.
up.
I said met up. I wasn't
Oh,
when they hooked up. I was. That's what I was insinuating. He was maybe managed by Jim Cornette, another great guy without a checkered past too. No skeletons in that closet, I'm sure. But she would actually suffer an injury during this time, which would shelf her for a little bit. Around this time, she began working as a wrestler and a manager for Pat Rose and Tom Pritchard. As she recovered, uh, she got help from the great Larry Sabisco, helped her join the AWA. Uh, she debuted in 1985 at Super Clash in Chicago, defeating Candy Divine for the AWA World Women's Championship. She ended up trading the belt with Divine on June 28th, 1986 at Battle by the Bay, where she defeated Divine to win the AWA Women's World Championship for the third and final time. However, she only held the title briefly for vacating it. During this time, in addition to her wrestling career, she was also a manager for the team of Playboy Buddy Rhodes and Pretty Boy Doug Sommers, whom she managed to win the AWA World Tag Team Championship. Rose and Summers then engaged in a lengthy feud with the Midnight Rockers, also known as Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Keep that name Shawn Michaels in the back of your head for later. That's called foreshadowing. They defeated Rose and Summers for the tag team title in January of '87, and then that would lead her into joining the World Wrestling Federation. She was referred to the World Wrestling Federation by Jesse Ventura. She would debut in '87, defeating the Fabulous Moolah, her former trainer, who kicked her out for the WF Women's Championship. Crazy how, you know, some of that stuff comes for full circle. During this time, she would rename herself the Sensational Sherri, that we would know her best as, and she reigned as the WF Women's Champion for 15 months uh, before losing it to Rockin' Robin in Paris, of all places. But at
Now,
Survivor,
you want to talk about full circle?
okay.
You know who Rockin' Robin's dad is?
If you give me like 2 seconds, I figure it out. Grizzly Smith.
Yep.
Oh shit! I see. Crazy how that happens. But at the Survivor Series of that year of 1997,
87.
that's what I said. No, what did I say?
You said 90.
I thought I said 87. Sorry. Check out Survivor Series 1997. 25 years later, Montreal screwed down. That's one of our podcasts we've done. She had a team consisting of the World Tag Team Champions, the Glamour Girls, and Dawn Marie and Donna Cristanello.
Yeah.
But they end up losing to the Fabulous Moolah's team, which had Rockin' Robin, Velvet McIntyre, and the Jumpin' Bomb Angels on it. This is when the W phased out its women's division in 1990. Martel remained with the company and turned her attention to managing male wrestlers. Boo. Boo. We want women's wrestling. Concurrent with her reign as WWF Women's Champion, Martel made several appearances in a costume as Peggy Sue, the girlfriend of the Honky Tonk Man, who was in the midst as run as Intercontinental Champion. She liked to irritate Honky's opponents, namely the Macho Man Randy Savage and Brutus the Barber Beefcake. It would interfere in his matches on his behalf. But
Want to know a fun fact about Peggy Sue?
yeah.
When on TV, you could tell it was Sherri. Well, not you could see it was a woman, I should say. But at a lot of live shows, because live shows where they'd have women wrestling sometimes, they wouldn't fly the women in. Jimmy Hart would dress up as Peggy Sue.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that will bring us all the way to WrestleMania 5. She confronts Miss Elizabeth. Check out the previous podcast on her. Who's obviously the manager and wife of the WF World Champion Randy Savage. And during an interview, that led to a confrontation between the two, in which Savage fired Miss Elizabeth and threatened to hit her. Martel then attacked Hulk Hogan from behind as he came to Miss Elizabeth's rescue. What a simp. Leaving it open to a chair attack from Savage. And then throughout the remainder of '89, Martel and Savage feuded with Hogan and Elizabeth. In that SummerSlam that year, Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake defeated the team of Savage and Zeus. After the match, Miss Elizabeth knocked out Martel with her own purse. Then she, Hogan, and Beefcake cut Martel's hair. At next year's WrestleMania, her and Savage lost a mixed tag team match against Sapphire and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Sorry, I don't want to mix those two up. After Miss Elizabeth, who was in the corner of Rhodes, interfered and shoved Martel. So a little bit of a rivalry brewing there.
A little bit of some meddling.
During that same year, Martel and Savage appeared on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach. That's a nice little. It's an actual TV show.
Yes.
Nice. I thought it was like a gimmick.
No. That's when kayfabe was alive and well, and you had Hulk Hogan going on a news channel and choking people out, and back when wrestling was still viewed as real.
Is that when he went on Arsenio Hall? He was like, I'm just a big kid, brother. I never took steroids. I took steroids to heal an injury once, and that's it. That's all I did.
Around that time, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, phew. Yikes. Uh, During a steel cage match at the world's famous arena on Madison Square Garden, the Ultimate Warrior pulled off escaping Martel's miniskirt to reveal matching black garter belts and lace underwear. Ooh. Practically in tears, Martel raced back to the locker room. I don't know why I didn't know that. But at WrestleMania 7, Savage ended up losing his retirement match against the Ultimate Warrior. But after the match, an irate Martel would attack him, but was eventually thrown from the ring by Miss Elizabeth, and they got back together. Iconic WrestleMania moment there.
Yes.
But later on in that same card, after she and Savage parted ways, she came down to the ring to help the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in his assault on an injured Roddy Piper. Found the match. She managed DiBiase until 1992. Remember that foreshadowing from earlier? This was coming back.
Yeah.
Because after this, she began managing the great WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels after Pat Patterson convinced Michaels to participate in the storyline. In 1992, during a Paul Bear interview segment, the Funeral Parlor, Sherri declared that she was now in love with Shawn Michaels, who had just turned his back on longtime tag team partner Marty Jannetty. This was also around time when she began singing his theme song, Sexy Boy. For those who don't know, she's the beginning that goes, ah, ah. Just throwing that out there.
Yes.
And as part of this gimmick, Michaels would admire himself in a full-length mirror before his matches. I think he always did that. In 1992, before a match, Jannetty grabbed the mirror and attempted to hit Michaels with it, but Michaels pulled Martel in front of him. After being hit with the mirror, she was absent from television until the 1993 Royal Rumble. And at that Rumble, she was in the neutral corner of the match between Michaels and Jannetty, but eventually turned on Michaels during the match, cementing what the industry calls a face turn. Backstage, Michaels confronted her and Jannetty. Came to a rescue. The storyline, however, was cut short as Jannetty was released from the company in the midst of the feud. Do you know why he was released, Logan?
I'm gonna assume drugs.
I was hoping you would know because it doesn't tell me.
Oh, I'm gonna assume drugs. That's really the only reason Marty Jannetty was let go. 3-4 times he was.
That's probably a good guess, I would assume. You can buy the book Heartbreak and Triumph, the Shawn Michaels story, and it's on pages 166 through 167. If you want to check that out. Martel spent the remainder of the year aligned with Tatanka, who aided her in her feud with Luna Vachon and Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yes, and that is where the second part of our story begins. None other than Luna Vachon. Luna Vachon actually came out with Shawn Michaels when he fought Tatanka at WrestleMania. And Luna was with Shawn for a little bit, but before we get to that point in her career, of course, Luna was born into a wrestling family. The Vachons, you had Paul Vachon, you had Mad Dog Vachon, and she wanted to be just like the rest of her family. Her Aunt Vivian, and they didn't want her to do it, but she was actually close with Andre the Giant because she would travel with her family. And, they even tried getting Andre to dissuade her. It's kind of like when, you hear those stories of Stephanie getting into the business and they tried having people dissuade her. Apparently Andre just wasn't good at convincing people not to get in the business. It was at the age of 16 that Gertrude Elizabeth Vachon, who would become Luna, began training under her Aunt Vivian and, again, the fabulous Moolah. She actually participated for Moolah's all-women's promotion and moved to Florida under the ring name Angel Vachon and became a member of a women's group led by women's wrestler Mad Maxine, also known as Lady Maxine. And at that time, she shared a residence with Denny Brown, a professional wrestler, as well as Scott Levy, who would later be known as Raven. 85, she debuted for Florida Championship Wrestling, giving an award to Kendall Windham, probably the only one that Kendall's ever gotten. Of course, the little brother of Barry Windham, and was kind of used as a placeholder when the Horsemen needed it. During this, she was slapped twice by Kevin Sullivan, and in the angle, this had her driven mad, and she ended up joining the Army of Darkness, which, if you listen to part one, of course, Nancy Benoit / Woman was a part of. As part of this gimmick, she shaved one half of her head, so Brutus Beefcake didn't have to. And then this was the first step to her mohawk that you would see throughout the course of her career. She covered in body paint, and she had a sneer. Luna wasn't easy with, or she expressed an uneasiness with this gimmick, and her son on the Dark Side of the Ring episode talked about how the growling and the sneering actually had an impact on her throat. It was in Florida that she first wrestled Medusa, which was a rivalry that lasted through many companies. And she would team up with The Lock. And they were the Daughters of Darkness in Kevin Sullivan's army. During this time, the duo also provided backup vocals for the thrash band Nasty Savage. They appeared throughout the indies, wrestling in POWW, and then she participated at Superclash 3 because of POWW's association with the AWA. She started managing the Blackhearts, which was a team out of Stampede Wrestling. Tom Nash, her then boyfriend, her then husband, and David Heath, the future Gangrel, and her future husband. Their names were Apocalypse and Destruction, and Luna traveled with them as well. Throughout Japan, Herb Abrams UWF, and they eventually split up in All Japan. She would work for the Wild Women of Wrestling as not only a competitor, but a commentator and a booker. It was in 92 that she was wrestling in Puerto Rico, and she tried to get David Heath, later known as Gangrel, a job with the WWF. But the interesting part about this is they developed an interest in her, and they hired her. But as said on the Dark Side of the Ring episode, they actually didn't know where she was. Even her father only knew she was in Florida. The WWF had to hire a private investigator to find her. And when she was found, she was just working as a waitress at a restaurant. That leads to where Anthony got cut off, as her first wrestling appearance for the WWF was April of 93, as I said, WrestleMania 9, accompanying the Intercontinental Champion Shawn Michaels in a match against Tatanka, who was being managed by Sensational Sherri. And then after the match, Luna attacked Sherri at ringside and in the first aid area, eventually being arrested by security, starting a vicious feud between the two.
But Sherri would end up being released from the World Wrestling Federation that summer. And there's two main reasons why she was released. And I'll let you decide which one you think is true and which one might be a fib. A little fib. Apparently she decided to enroll in cosmetology school, or she failed drug tests. You pick. You pick which one.
Right. I have an idea in my head, but I won't say.
Yeah, well, we be nice. She does have good hair. But after her release,
thanks, Brutus.
She should go down. She spend some time in some independent promotions, most notably Smoky Mountain Wrestling, USWA. She participated in a WWF invasion angle. to feud with Jerry the King Lawler and all that. She also showed up in Eastern Championship Wrestling before it became Extreme Championship Wrestling. She would manage Shane Douglas.
Yeah.
She would turn on him in a tag team match with Brian Pillman, costing Douglas the match on behalf of Ric Flair. And she wrestled, I think, one of her only matches at November to Remember, where she faced Malia Hosoka in a match.
Yes. I don't know if you're familiar with the USWA Invasion angle. Brian Zane actually talked about it on Wrestling with Regret. This was the first time that we got a heel Mr. McMahon character. But the thing that I want to talk about with it, and this comes up again, while during that, her dress again gets yanked off. So you figure she's got her haircut once. She's got her dress ripped off multiple times. She had a mirror smashed into her. She's going to have her dress ripped off again. Why is Sherri, like, this is almost a Jim Ross level of embarrassment to me. Like, Sherri's supposed to be, you know, this grand champion, multiple AWA women's champion, a long-term reigning WWF women's champion, managed, you know, people to Intercontinental Championships, to Tag Championships. Why this kind of embarrassment? To someone like Jim Cornette, I get, right? Because he was the sniveling heel. Bobby Heenan, I get. Why do you think they chose Sherri to just make look like a buffoon?
Easy choice, maybe? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I tried to wrap my head around it. I mean, I don't like what WWE did to Jim Ross, but and it makes sense. You know, the wrestling Southern commentator, the cowboy. You know, completely different than what Vince McMahon was. So of course he's gonna pick him. Like I said, Heenan, Jimmy Hart, and Cornette all sniveling heels. Sherri was vicious. And I mean, this isn't really getting your comeuppance, right? In wrestling, to get your comeuppance, I guess the mirror shot would be, but like having her dress ripped off, I guess it's embarrassing. But I don't know. It just while looking at stuff on Sherri, I never understood why that seemed to be the consistent, easy ploy in all her big feuds.
Oh no, her boat is out.
You said it just like someone in Smoky Mountain.
Just them reincarnated, I guess. After all that, after those stints for that year, she would end up in WCW with a big boy.
Even more south.
About as south as you can get. She would manage the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Woo.
Ooh.
She would sign with WCW in 1994. Her original plans were for her to manage Kevin and Dave Sullivan against Missy Hyatt and the Nasty Boys, but Missy Hyatt was fired. I think she also probably went to cosmetology school.
It's interesting that two of Sherri's big feuds were done because someone got fired. Like that's just bad luck.
Yeah. A lot of cosmetology schools popping up around here. Martel, she eventually did make her debut in April at WCW Saturday Night under the name Sensuous Sherri. I would have got there. This was because the name Sensational Sherri was trademarked by the WWF, if you didn't know. In an interview with Mean Gene Okerlund, she said her goal was to find a man that can bring her the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. And she was at ringside during WCW Slamboree. And then during the World Championship match between Flair and Barry Windham. Then on June 24th, a title unification match would end up taking place at Clash of the Champions between WCW World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair and the WCW International World Heavyweight Champion Sting. Although she revealed in the beginning of the match she sided with Sting, including wearing his signature face paint, it turned out to be a double cross. She sided with Flair, who won the match and unified the titles, double teaming Sting until a newly signed Hulk Hogan came out to make the save. There's a lot of guarantees in wrestling, and Sting getting turned on is always one of them. So I love to see that.
Yes.
At Bash at the Beach that year, Martel tried to help Flair defeat Hogan in the match by giving him brass knuckles, but failed. And at the feud's climactic battle, a steel cage match at Halloween Havoc, Martel would climb the cage to aid Flair, and in the process, her dress got pulled off by Jimmy Hart, leaving her dangling from the cage in black lingerie. So her time with Ric Flair would come to an end pretty quickly after that, because then she began managing Harlem Heat.
Yes, sir.
Booker T and Stevie Ray, and she was named Sister Sherri. She would actually manage a team to seven WCW World Tag Team Championships. Then in late 1994, while still managing Harlem Heat, Martel made a return appearance in ECW to manage Shane Douglas and Brian Pillman against Ron Simmons and Too Cold Scorpio. Watch out. Don't go to the loves with them.
It was actually in this time, the infamous promo from Booker T, where he told Hulk Hogan that they were coming for him. Sherri was there. Sherri was their manager at the time. Yeah. But as Anthony was alluding to, check out our Two Cold Killers podcast, where one of the Cold Killers is none other than Too Cold Scorpio.
Self-defense, though. That's what I was told.
Yes.
Back in WCW, Martel had a brief on-screen romance with Colonel Robert Parker. That was until October. Then Harlem Heat fired him and Martel. Then they had a match with him at World War III. She would continue to manage Harlem Heat until she would end up getting fired, probably to go start again at a different cosmetology school, from what I was told, in July of 1997. Yeah. She would eventually return to WCW in the year 2000, where she would make 3 wrestling and television appearances with WCW. The first was at Sold Out 2000, watching at ringside during the Chris Benoit versus Sid Vicious matchup for the World Championship. And the second was in January of 2000 on an episode of WCW Thunder, where she had a match with Medusa, and she lost. And then her third and final appearance in WCW, she had a match with Mona. She also lost. And that match, I heard, was a loser goes to cosmetology school match.
Funny enough, Mona was actually Molly Holly in her infancy in wrestling.
And you can
shortly after she...
You can tell by Molly Holly's hairstyle that she obviously never went to cosmetology school. So if it probably would have been best for her to lose this match and go. So...
Yeah, I mean, she went to cosmetology school at WrestleMania 20, that's for certain. Victoria helped her out.
Fast forward towards the end of her career, she would eventually wrestle in her very last match at a Wrestle Reunion show in 2005. She teamed with Peggy Lee Leather, Amber O'Neil, and Chrissy Vane. She would end up losing to Wendy Richter, Malia Huska, and Bambi, and Janie Taylor. But in 2005, she would return to WWE in that famous segment with Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, where she would come out and sang a new theme song for Kurt Angle, the Sexy Kurt song. He's just a sexy Kurt.
He's just a sexy Kurt.
You'll make your ankles hurt. Then, finally, a year later, she would and be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. She'd be inducted by Ted DiBiase. But, she got to end up still make that money because later that year she would work for TNA Wrestling. She taped a backstage vignette trying to offer her managerial services to free agent Bobby Roode. But this would eventually end up being her last television appearance. But obviously nothing would come to it. Unfortunately, on June 15th of 2007, she would die at her mom's house in McCalla, Alabama, which is just outside of Birmingham, at the young age of 49 years old. On September 11th, 2007, homicide investigators in Tuscaloosa released a toxicology report stating that she died of an accidental overdose with multiple drugs in her system, including high amounts of oxycodone, and she was cremated after her death. So she stopped going to
Sherry's one of those
cosmetology
that
school.
kind of. Sherry's story always kind of baffles me because, I mean, they talk about her a little bit more than, Luna or obviously Woman, even Elizabeth. But you figure a 3-time AWA Women's Champion, a WWF Women's Champion, which you'd think they would have referenced when they had the Evolution pay-per-view, in the Hall of Fame. And then she was Manager of the Year in '91. And that was a year
Yeah.
that there was still plenty of managers. She actually broke up. So Jim Cornette was Manager of the Year from 1984 until 1990, and then again from 92 to 96.
Hey, but
So she had such a year that she ended his streak.
real quick, let me just go through it. These are all of her accomplishments in her career. Like you said, she was the AWA Women's World Champion. She won that 3 times. And then in the AWA Superstars of Wrestling promotion, she would win the Women's Championship 1 time. She's an honoree, the 1994 honoree of the Cauliflower Alley Club. She won the IWA Women's Championship 1 time. She was the Class of 2022 Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, a member of the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, Class of 2014, a King Sport Wrestling Hall of Fame, Class of 2003, a Women's Superstars Uncensored Hall of Fame, Class of 2009, the Women's Wrestling Hall of Fame, Class of 2024, so very recently. She also won the WWF Women's Championship 1 time, and obviously she was in the WWE Hall of Fame Class of 2006. And as you just said, she was Manager of the Year in 1991 for the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
Sherry had a decorated career, no different than Luna. Now, after Luna and Sherry had their feud in the WWF, this was around the time, well, actually, it was during it, that Bam Bam Bigelow had a confrontation with Sherry, and he was attacked by Tatanka. And around this time, Bam Bam said he had fallen in love with Luna, and Luna was his main squeeze, calling her Tick, which fans, combined. So she was Lunatic. They'd blow kisses to each other, and in her honor, he included the moonsault, which he called the Lunassault. There was a mixed tag team match planned at SummerSlam '93, but Luna actually injured her arm, and Sherry left the WWF. So Bigelow and the Head Shrinkers fought Tatanka and the Smoking Guns. Bam Bam and Luna started feuding with Doink the Clown, which led to a Survivor Series match of Bigelow, the Head Shrinkers, and Bastion Booger fighting the 4 Doinks, which is Met on the Mission and the Bushwhackers in clown makeup. And Luna would actually cause some dissension between Bam Bam Bigelow and his tag team partner Bastion Booger, who had also fallen in love with her. It was at WrestleMania 10 where Bam Bam and Luna finally got their revenge on Doink by beating Doink and Dink. The women's division was revived when Medusa, who was under the name Alundra Blaze, came to the WWF. Luna wanted the title and had a series of matches with her, usually having Alundra Blaze win by pinfall. It was said on her dark side of the ring that Medusa just wanted to give Luna the win in Canada. So wanted to leave the company, She was going to let Luna pin her because Luna deserved the title for everything she had done, and Luna just she wouldn't let her do it. It was around this time too that Luna sold Bam Bam's contract to Ted DiBiase. And then she picked Japanese wrestler Bull Nakano to win the women's title from Alundra, which she eventually did. But Luna left the WWF shortly after this. In '94, Luna was the first woman to appear in a WWF video game when she was included in none other than WWF Raw. After leaving the company, she ended up going to ECW at recommendation of Kevin Sullivan's then wife Nancy, and she was brought in by none other than Tommy Dreamer, who was feuding with Raven. Dreamer introduced Luna as someone from her past, which of course, as I mentioned earlier, she lived with Raven for a time. And Luna would stand with Tommy Dreamer, even fighting Stevie Richards and her husband at the time, Gangrel, who was known as the Vampire Warrior. She actually had some physical confrontations in ECW, including a cage match which she won, and I will note, did not have her skirt ripped off. That same year, she was ranked 306 in the PWI 500, the second woman to be included on that list after Miss Texas, better known as Jacqueline, so two ass kickers and two women that I would not want to make angry. She did participate in Puerto Rico, and she was the name Angel Baby, and she was also in IWA Mid-South. She did show up in WCW, again, when Medusa was there. This is after Medusa dropped that same WWF title in the trash. Luna interfered in Medusa's matches with Akira Hokuto, preventing Medusa from winning the WCW title. They actually had a series of matches, but even though Luna pretty much dominated her in each match, and I'm saying that as someone who had these on tape, who watched them, Medusa would always eke out the victory. Her time in WCW wasn't long. She showed back up in the WWF. First, she was Goldust's manager when he was the artist formerly known as Goldust. They would wear different costumes, different outfits as he would at the time. They were Dominatrix, a slave, a New Year baby. So a Dominatrix and a slave, a New Year baby, and his nurse. The first feud was Vader, and her first appearance actually had her wheeling Goldust to the ring as Goldust pretended to be paralyzed from a Vader splash. But then they blinded Vader with medical fluid. Then their feuds continued. Vader eventually did defeat Goldust at the '98 Royal Rumble. This I've mentioned many times. It's one of the first full wrestling pay-per-views I watched because I had it on tape. I did not know what to think of the artist formerly known as Goldust. I did not know what to think of Luna Vachon in this role, especially being 5-6 years old. At other times when they were together, they impersonated Triple H in China in a match against Owen Hart. Triple H wanted this to be a joke, but because Owen beat Goldust, that dirty Commissioner Slaughter, who thought he discovered Undertaker in a box of tapes, awarded the title to Owen Hart, considering Goldust Triple H's actual replacement. Goldust started a team with Mark Merrow, which then led to Luna and Sable feuding. They had a mixed tag team match at WrestleMania 14 where the couples fought each other. And Luna also ended up having a evening gown match with Sable at the future pay-per-view Unforgiven. Of course, this feud was not just on screen, because this is when Sable's popularity was rising at the time, and it seemed like she kind of had a kiss of death, right? She was with Mark Merrow. He tapered off. With Goldust and Luna, they tapered off. With the Oddities at one point, they tapered off. So whoever she was with, she kind of sucked the popularity from him. Luna and her trained for the Mania match, but Sable allegedly refused how to take bumps, and Luna was threatened by the WWF that hurting Sable would put her job in jeopardy, even leaving a bruise on her. Sable also bragged about being in contention for the Women's Championship, something that eluded Luna. And Luna actually got hurt in the match where she carried Sable. Sable was congratulated by everybody numerous times because of how the matches went, even though, again, Luna carried her. Everyone congratulated Sable except for Owen Hart and Mick Foley, two great guys to check in on Luna. Um, Luna described this match and feud as a highlight of her career, even though clearly she was disrespected. Um, and as WWF goes, in '98, they patched up their differences on screen. And they were in the human oddities, which the oddities, of course, Luna, Sable, Golga, who was Earthquake under a mask and carried a Cartman stuffed animal to the ring, Giant Silva, who might as well have been the Great Khali, but not as well. Jackal was with them for some time, who is none other than Cyrus, Don Callis. They also had the ICP, Kurgan, who was a big missed opportunity in the WWF. Good thing he found Hollywood. And finally, George the Animal Steel. They were super over for a time because their entrance theme and getting the fans to jump up. But again, Sable kind of coming in kind of sucked it dry. Luna actually attacked Mark Merrow's new manager, Jacqueline, defending her friend. She was Miss Texas, or the former Miss Texas. And Luna got a victory. Sable had just won the new WWF Women's Championship. Imagine going from Alundra Blaze to Sable. But she was attacked by a masked spider lady, which was an old gimmick that Moolah used to screw over Richter. But it turned out to be Luna. And she said, it's about her, it's what she deserves. Ironically enough, something gets glossed over in his career. Shane McMahon personally supported Luna's efforts to win the championship. He actually booked a leather strap match at the Royal Rumble. And in this feud, Luna was attacked by an obsessed Sable fan. Turned out to be Tori. Luna actually defeated Gilbert, and this led to her challenging Sable for another shot. And then we have 6 months later, bad. Thanks. Then we've got, at about 6 months later, Luna returned after she was suspended for fighting Sable. I'll go back to it. Yeah, what a naughty doggy. But, alright, mark the time in 3, 2, and 1. But about 6 months later, she actually returned at SummerSlam after she was suspended in real life, not kayfabe, for fighting with Sable backstage. She was chasing Ivory, the then women's champion, and she jumped right back into the women's title chase. This and started a feud between the two, who are both looked at as underrated performers of the time, and they actually had a non-title match at Unforgiven. She lost in a Hardcore Rules match, and also during this feud, she had a match with Jeff Jarrett. From then on, she was just Gangrel's manager, and she would have appearances on and off. You'd see her at Survivor Series 99, participating in a match that also had Moolah and Mae Young. One of the last appearances you saw of her was, of course, at the 2000 Royal Rumble, where she was in a swimsuit contest, but her legit dissatisfaction with the sexualization of the women's division caused her to refuse to take off her gown. She then had a mini feud with Harvey Whippleman, the manager and referee. And then she ended up having one more match with Gangrel until she was released in 2000. Like Sherri, she had quite a bit of independent tours after her time in the WWF, but she never reached the grandiose that she once had. A local note was she became the first Great Lakes Championship Women's Champion, defeating Tracy Brooks in December of 2007. Ironically enough, Tracy Brooks is the woman that would manage Bobby Roode, the same man that Sherri Martel was trying to court.
Hey.
Final years of her death, her final years in death, she ended up also dying of a drug overdose like Sherri Martel. But that is not where the sadness begins nor ends. It was actually around Christmas of 2009. Her entire home was destroyed, and she lost all of her wrestling-related memorabilia of not only herself, but her family. So you figure her aunt and uncles, who were women's champion and world champions.
Damn.
It was then again thanks to none other than Mick Foley. He had fans send her memorabilia to her post office box. She was offered a spot at TNA Hardcore Justice to manage Tommy Dreamer again, but she turned it down, stating she was retired. And that is probably for the best. Because, as we mentioned on a previous one, Hardcore Justice was terrible. But she was a AWF Women's Champion. She was in the class of 2022 for Canadian Pro Wrestling. She got the Ladies Wrestling Award from the Cauliflower Alley Club in 2009. She was that Great Lakes Championship Ladies Wrestling Champion. She was a Ladies Major League Wrestling Champion. She was in the Memphis Hall of Fame in 2002. She was, as I said before, she was ranked 306 in the top 595 at a time when professional wrestling was greatly overlooked. She was in the class of 2020 for the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame Museum. A South Coast Championship Wrestling Women's Champion, a Sunshine Wrestling Federation Ladies Champion, a USWA Women's Champion, a Wild Women of Wrestling TV Champion, a Women's Superstars Uncensored Hall of Famer in the class of 2011, Women's Wrestling Hall of Fame in class of 2023, and was the Universal Women's Hardcore Champion. But you know what else she was?
Well, she actually had to be a WWE Hall of Famer, correct?
She was, she went into Legacy Wing, which, as you know, and as we've talked about, is bullshit. The Legacy Wing is such a cop-out and such just garbage. I don't understand why they created it. Why not just put these individuals in because they actually deserve it? Why do we have people like, sorry, but why do we have people like Booker T's wife in the Hall of Fame? Why do we have people like Coco Beware in the Hall of Fame? People like Luna Vachon are not allowed to be in the actual hall. They're put in the Legacy Wing. I can understand the argument for some of the people I've complained about before, like Bruiser Brody or Wahoo McDaniel, because, you know, they're older. They might not have had a long reign in the WWE or WWF. Luna was the first woman in a WWF video game, as I said. She also had an extended career. She fought for the women's title. She showed up in WCW. She was in ECW during its peak. And they still can't give her a normal Hall of Fame induction? Medusa's in the hall. Bull Nakano just went in the hall. The big women from that era are all in the hall, and they just toss her a Legacy Wing induction?
That's pretty disrespectful.
Her last wrestling match for WWF itself was 2000. And you're telling me that she's a Legacy Wing? You know how ridiculous and just head scratching that sounds?
It's
like you're telling me that the year they put in Honky Tonk Man, Tori Wilson, and Brutus Beefcake, they couldn't have had one more slot for Luna Vachon?
Or just wait.
Did people really want to hear? Did people really want to hear Honky Tonk Man talk and try and carny him for $100? Did people really want to hear Brutus Beefcake talk about carrying Hogan's coattails? I mean, he could have had Luna's family up there. They could have got a ring. They could have got a plaque. I'm pretty sure at the time, at least one of her uncles was still alive to accept the induction. And if the whole reason they put her in the Legacy Wing is because she's dead, then I want all the other Hall of Fames, starting with 2004, I want them all looked over, and anyone that was dead at the time of induction to be put in the Legacy Wing.
Well,
because there's
you can only have.
What you got? What you got?
I was just gonna bring up that. So they inducted her into the Legacy Wing in what year was that? 2000,
2019. 2019.
2019. I don't know. I mean, Charmel got inducted in 2022.
Yeah.
So if you want to make the argument who deserves it, there's an argument for Charmel Sullivan Huffman. There's an argument to be made. But yeah, I think it's very disrespectful that they're in the Legacy Wing.
Especially because like the NFL Legacy Wing and even the MLB, I think, has one. It's supposed to be for people that weren't recognized and were from decades before, and they're finally getting their piece of the pie. I know for MLB right now, the big thing is the Negro Leagues. For the NFL, it was a lot of the AFL players. So like I said, I'd understand if this was people, fought in Japan or Mexico, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, wrestled in the NWA, didn't really make it up to the Connecticut territory. Luna wrestled in the 80s and 90s. Wrestling was at its peak, and she wrestled for all three major companies, as well as being on Super Clash, which was the big pay-per-view that wasn't put on by the WWF. So she literally checks every box.
Yeah.
It's something her name being in the Legacy Wing probably upsets me more than anyone else. Like I said, you could convince me why Brody's in it, even though that's a whole other rant for another day. You convince me Wahoo's in it. You convince me all these other people. But putting Luna in is such, like you said, not only a slap in the face to her children, but the whole Vachon family. Because this would have been a time when you could have had the Vachons up there, like they sent the Maiavias out, right? Like they sent the Hearts out. But nope. And then it's funny because you look at her recognized accolades on, if you just go to Wikipedia, and it's one-time USWA Women's Champion and part of Vachon Wrestling family. And that was the brief little bullshit statement that they had their little speaker say, even though she had a career that made a lot of men probably jealous. Why wouldn't you bring up she was the first woman in a WWF video game? Why wouldn't you bring up she was one of two women on a top 500 list in 1995, which was, what, more than 15 years before women's wrestling really hit a boom?
Yeah.
Stupid.
Well, I think we have a chance here. It seems like the Legacy Wing has been somewhat retired, especially with Triple H taking over. So I don't think we have it. Well, there'll be no more inductees to that, but maybe somebody can put it into his ear, especially since it's so criticized and stuff like that. We can get some of the people that, especially somebody like Bruiser Brody, that's also part of the Legacy Wing, actual inductions, and start trying to weed out some people that are in that group that deserve it.
Yeah, and like I said, I guess it's good that they got recognized, but I just don't understand how the Luthez's, the Haystacks Calhouns,
Frank Gotch, Luthez.
Yeah, the Stan Stasiaks, the third WWF champion of all time. And then Luna, I don't understand how people like that are in the Legacy Wing. It seems like a cop-out, and as we know, Vince McMahon really didn't care about history or care about other promotions, so I don't really know why they did it. So whatever, I guess whatever dipshit put that thought into his ear, I hate you, and don't give any other ideas. Just go away. And I'll say that whether it's like Ric Flair, I'll say that whether it's like, I know it wasn't, but a Cody Rhodes, like just go away.
Just go away.
Just go away. The Legacy Wing's garbage. Luna Vachon for a real induction. Put her in the same year. I mean, Batista's waiting to go in. Put her into.
Yeah. Do you know else I can that you know what else I can just go away?
What else can go away?
Bad body odor.
Bad body odor. Tell me about it.
Well, I'll tell you about it. If you use our Dr. Squatch referral link in the description, not only will you be able to build your own box with different types of soaps and everything like that. As I said at the very beginning, you will also get the Maverick. What's it called? The Maverick Musk. Um,
Yes.
the Maverick Musk uh, body soap for free. Uh, so all I gotta do is just click the link in the description down below, and it'll be all yours.
Yeah, but actually, I said I'd reveal the name itself. Part three of this series of, I'd say the probably the valets, I guess you'd say, of the '90s when women's wrestling wasn't the hottest. It's gonna be none other than Sunny Days herself, Tammy Sitch, and she's not gonna share a podcast with anyone. I can't really think of anyone else that would get their own platform more than Sunny. So the next time, part three of this women's valets of the '90s, Sunny. And where will they be able to find this podcast and that future one?
Well, if you're watching on YouTube, all you gotta do is hit the subscribe button and click that little bell icon to get notifications on all of our podcast and video uploads. If you're listening on any of the podcasting services like Odyssey, Spotify, Apple, you just hit the follow button there, and our RSS feed, whenever it gets updated, you will get notified in your podcasting app whenever a new episode drops. You can also click the link tree in the description of this podcast or YouTube video that has links to all of our social medias. That includes X, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. So go follow all of those. We just crossed the 6,000 mark on Facebook. We're inching closer, ever so close to 400
Yes.
subscribers on YouTube. Almost over that hump. So if you do enjoy this content, I highly encourage you to show your support, not only by checking out Dr. Squatch soaps in the description, who are very kind to let us refer their products on our podcast, but also by liking, subscribing, and rating on your podcast app, and leaving a nice comment down below to help the algorithm recommend this video to other like-minded wrestling fans. With that,
Yes, as always, like he said, leave a nice comment, follow them community guidelines, and as always, thank you for the comment.